All right, Rebecca, welcome to Sasquatch Theory. How are you doing today?
Thanks. I'm doing well.
Good to hear. And it's a pleasure to have you on the show again and to be speaking
Mhm.
with you about my encounters and experiences. Today, we're just going to run through some of the encounters and experiences that I went through throughout the years here in Missouri. And
Mhm.
you can kind of give me your 2 cents on it and possibly help other people cope with these types of encounters.
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so basically, I got into the subject and I was listening to like Sasquatch Chronicles, watching the show Finding Bigfoot, and
Mhm.
part of me wanted to believe because there was sincere people on those podcasts and on those videos, and you'd hear about states like Missouri, and it'd make you wonder, like, are these creatures actually around? And then you'd believe it when you're watching it or listening to the podcast because you can feel the fear in their voice. People are
Mhm.
crying. They're like you said in the last episode, you can tell there's like some form of like PTSD, like they're reliving it. But then
Mhm.
once the show would end, I'd go back to regular life, for, work and the family, and then I'd be like, I don't know if I believe that because reality sets in. But
Mhm.
I had experiences throughout the years, and one time I was hunting. I had this black chair out in the woods, and I was rifle hunting for whitetail deer, and that evening I went back home, and the next morning I came back to that spot, and there's this cedar tree right next to that chair, and about, I would say, 7 to 9 foot up, that cedar tree was snapped, and it was fresh. Like whenever you see like a fresh cedar broken, you can tell that it was recently done. And
Mhm.
the top of that cedar was sitting right next to the chair, like right next to it. And I kind of joked to myself, and I was like, oh, Bigfoot did it. But I mean,
Mhm.
it just really confused me because there was no wind that night. It was just a dead still night. So
Mhm.
I'm thinking in my mind, like, man, was this thing like struck by lightning? No, there wasn't a storm. How could this thing just break? But I went on with life. Like, there's no answer to that. And I don't know. It was years later, probably in my mid 20s. Me and the ex girlfriend were camping at the river, and we were talking about the show Finding Bigfoot because we'd been watching it every day after we get off work. And at work, I was an engineer assistant in an office, and I'd sit there and listen to Sasquatch Chronicles all day whenever I was running
Mhm.
reports for other companies. But we were talking about finding Bigfoot. We were camping on the river. It was probably around July in the summertime, and I did a whoop call that I heard on Finding Bigfoot, and then
Mhm.
I had this metal baseball bat in my Mercury Mountaineer, so I went and got it out, and I did a wood knock on a large maple tree that was growing along the river. And I don't know, it was probably like 30 minutes after that. Again, there's no wind, and this huge tree went down across the river. I mean, you could hear it
Mhm.
cracking, snapping, and whenever it hit the ground, it was just like boom. I mean, big tree. It almost reminded me of like Jurassic Park 3 when the T-Rex is fighting, I don't know what it's called, the Spinosaurus, and they're going
Mhm.
at it and it breaks its neck, and whenever it slams it on the ground, that boom, that's how it was
Mhm.
like. But I don't know, our eyes just kind of got big, and we looked at each other and just kind of shrugged our shoulders like, what was that? That's kind of weird. No
Mhm.
wind, random tree
Mhm.
falls. We were not thinking Bigfoot. And then about, I don't know, later on that night, all the floaters that were on the river, people were like partying, listening to music, drinking beer. And a lot of people from St. Louis come down to the country here where I live to float,
Mhm.
and it's kind of a tourist area. But
Mhm.
once the sun starts going down, the river just gets dead quiet because people clear the rivers. They get back to the resorts. You don't want to be out there at nighttime. Just kind of
Mhm.
nasty. But we were cooking food, some hot dogs, some burgers, and we were sitting there talking about that tree that fell. Like, that was pretty random. Like, we did these calls, these wood knocks, and a big tree slammed down. Well, as we
Mhm.
were talking about it, on our side of the river behind us, something screamed. I mean, it was just guttural loud. I don't know how
Mhm.
to describe it, but it was like a monster mixed with like a woman screaming. I mean,
Mhm.
you could tell the sound was probably about 9 feet off the ground. Behind us, it's super flat for about 200 yards, and then it goes up to this bluff. But you could tell it was like right there on us. And
Mhm.
she was instantly panicking, like, grab your gun, grab your gun. I had a Glock 19 sitting next to me, and I was in disbelief. Like, I looked at her and I had like this smirk on my face, like the Grinch, how he slowly like smiles. Like, it was like that because in that moment I realized, like, holy crap, these things exist. And she's saying, grab your gun, grab your gun. And I didn't grab the gun because I felt like whatever that was would have came in and tore me apart. I don't know. It was just a feeling that I got, like, if you do that, something bad's going to happen. And the weird thing is like, we went to bed in the tent and nothing happened that night. Or at least I don't know if anything happened because I fell asleep and I slept through the entire night. And I think she did too. But I don't know, after that ended, like, how I told you with Finding Bigfoot, Sasquatch Chronicles, like, I would believe, and then I'd go back to reality. Like, my brain was just like, oh my God, it could be Bigfoot. But then once it ended, your brain is like left wondering, like, maybe it was a mountain lion.
Right.
And that's what I thought, like, maybe a mountain lion climbed up into a tree and just like screamed at us. But it was so loud. I mean, it sounded prehistoric.
Did you, like, how old were you at the time?
I was probably like 24 years old, 25.
Okay.
Somewhere around there.
And so after that happened, I'm always curious when people say, then I went to sleep in my tent. And I don't understand how you go to sleep after something like that. Can you tell me what was going on in your head? How you were able to just put that aside, go into your tent?
Well, honestly, I was scared to death, but all my stuff was there. We were there to camp, and my brain went from instant shock to confusion. And it's like, there's nothing else you can do. I mean,
Sure.
I was trying to stay cool and maybe experience more by just saying, like, let's go in the tent and just go to bed. Everything's good. But really, in my mind, I'm like,
yeah,
what the heck is this?
Yeah.
It was more curiosity and fear mixed into one.
I wonder if sometimes it is that shock and then confusion, and it's so exhausting for your body to process all that. That's why you can sleep. Some people can turn off that fight or flight, and it's almost like that adrenaline dump, extreme adrenaline, and then you come down off of that and you're just so exhausted that you're able to sleep. That's the only way I can explain it, because I try to think, if I went through that kind of experience, I don't know how I could put it aside and just fall asleep. But wow.
Yeah. Bigfoot doesn't exist in my mind at this point, so I'm just like, it could have been anything. Like,
right.
Who knows what it was?
Rational mind still tries to explain something that's not explainable. So when you heard it, is that a sound that you had some kind of concept of how to categorize it, or it was so unlike anything you'd ever heard, you just have no idea?
Yeah, exactly. My brain didn't have a place to file that, and there was just nothing there. I mean, in my mind, like, what is this? Never heard it before. I don't know. I'm not going to make assumptions and just jump to conclusions. So I was trying to be rational as well, and I think a lot of people are. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't do that. They're like, they hear it now and they're like, that's Bigfoot, or they take like a blurry photo and they're like, look at it, there's like 20 of them right there. But in this case, I'm really into wildlife hunting and just the outdoors, and it's just like, okay, this is something new. I don't know everything there is to know, even though I know there's mountain lions out there, owls, coyotes. Could have been anything.
Did you search for that after you went home? Did you search for that sound, or what does a mountain lion sound like, or how did you come to realize later that that was what it was?
It was probably a few years later till I really realized what it was. And after that experience, I lived probably 5 minutes from there, closer to town. And this was my friend's property, but curiosity got the best of me, and I kept doing that call. Even where I lived, like, I would stand on the back deck and do that whoop call, just a loud whoop. And one day after I got off work, I was taking out the trash, and I was standing on the back deck and I did that whoop call, and it was almost dark time. And I kid you not, something came through the woods. I mean, it was zigzagging. It sounded like a bulldozer was going through the woods. And I always describe it as someone like leaving, like, I don't know, like a little Ford Ranger S10 pickup truck in neutral and just letting it roll down the hill through the woods. And it was just coming at me. And I go inside and I grab my axe. I'm like, hey, something's out there. Come here. And she comes, she hears it. We're both just standing there like, what the heck is this?
Mm-hmm.
And this thing's going through the woods, and it just stops right at the edge of the wood line. It's almost dark, and everything just gets quiet. Nothing happens after that. But the events that unfolded after that were pretty strange. There was a lot of paranormal activity, things tapping on the window. Like it happened like 3 or 4 times throughout the year, and just terrifying things. Like we'd hear like a baby, like an infant baby crying in the house, gasping for air, like as if like the mother abandoned it. And we're honestly like looking under the bed, like looking in every room, like there's a baby here. Like you can hear it clear as day. Just the baby crying, gasping for air, wanting its mother. And I even looked on the front porch because it was snowing. I was like, maybe somebody like left a baby on the porch. It's sad to think that, but people do that type of stuff. And I looked, there was nothing there. And after we got done searching, we were both just confused. And this is a creepy part. I didn't tell her this when it happened, but I looked out the window and I swear there was like a lady in a white dress. Like it looked like an older lady just walking on the side of the highway, like on the road. And it's snowing outside. It's almost dark. And I'm like, she asked, do you see anything? And I closed the window. I said, no, I don't see anything. I didn't want to tell her because I didn't want her to freak out. Yeah, but there was a lot of strange stuff. Like we'd hear voices and stuff. And I just think that my curiosity of the paranormal caused it to happen because I got in this rut where I really wanted to know, is there life after death? Are ghosts really real? And I started watching a lot of paranormal shows just every day. I got really into it. But I feel like that opened up a doorway because whenever I'd be watching the shows, stuff would happen. It's like, I'm watching it right there and it's happening right here. Like, that's weird. That's not a coincidence.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, well, last time we talked about the experience you had when you were a teenager, about 15, and you had watched the Exorcist movie and you saw a dark figure like a mannequin coming out of a hole. Was that your first paranormal experience, or what can you remember as far back that you might even suspect was your first experience with the paranormal?
Yeah, that was my first paranormal experience. I think like a big one that happened. But yeah, whenever I was in Mexico, that was strange because I was watching the exorcism of Emily Rose. The power went out and that thing like manifested. But I feel like it sucked the energy out of the house because I thought back on it after doing paranormal research and like that's what researchers say, that they need energy to manifest. So I thought back and I was like, that's weird. The power went out whenever that happened. But yeah, I stood face to face with this thing and it was like 3D ink black, like no face. And it was like a mannequin or like the Silver Surfer. It was scary for sure, but I shrugged it off. And ever since that day, I've struggled with like my mental health as far as like having anxiety and fear, doubt, things like that.
Okay, so that was an experience that changed you pretty significantly.
Yeah, and it's been hard to shut that off. I don't know if it's just because I experienced things that shouldn't exist, or maybe I opened up a doorway and something latched onto me. So there is that. But the experiences continued at that place. There was like, we definitely seen orbs. Like one time I was looking at a star and it was like bright orange and I was like, man, that's got to be a planet because it's way bigger than the other ones. And the best way I describe this is like in those movies where that guy's pulling the moon towards him. And it was like that, like it came towards me and it turned like, I don't know, it got really big and it was like the size of like, I don't know, like a volleyball or a beach ball. And it was big and orange. And then it started floating around to the front of the house. And we are close to this. I tell her, come out here. She sees it. She's staying out there with me. We go from the side of the house to the front of the house because this thing moved to the front. And then it was like, I don't know, turning different colors. Then it started like radiating, kind of like an ambulance or like a disco ball. Like it was changing colors. And we both watched this thing shoot off at a 90-degree angle. Like it looked like it got sucked up into space, like through a vacuum cleaner. Like you could see this thing just boom, gone, like a bullet. Yeah, that was creepy.
Did you at the time, did you know what it was, or were you also just as confused?
Yeah, I was just as confused, but I knew without a doubt that I had just seen a UFO. But I don't know if that's what it was. Like maybe it was like these orbs that people are seeing in the woods. Maybe it was a craft, some type of artificial intelligence. I have no idea, but it definitely happened. So we end up breaking up. My life kind of goes to crap. I lose my job due to like my mental health and just trying to take care of myself. And I end up moving back to where I used to live, out in the woods, out in the country. And I start working at a different place, a meat processing plant. And I'm trying to get into hunting just to keep myself busy. I'm trying to learn about public land, and the owner of the new job site that I'm working at, we were talking about deer hunting, and I asked him, hey, do you know any good public land areas that I can go to bow hunt? And he's like, hey, if you go to this area behind Merrimack Springs, it's covered in deer. Like, if you go there and you don't see 30 deer, something's wrong. So I was like, ooh, I want to go there. So he writes down the directions on a napkin, and he's telling me, he's like, you know where this road is? You know where this is? And I'm just like, I have no idea. But I'm just like I'm trying to figure it out. So I was like, I'll figure it out. I know the main highway, and he gave me the road name, so I'll find it. So I ended up going out there, and I actually found the place. I went out there after work. It was September 14th, 2018. The reason I remember that is because it was the day before opening bow season here in Missouri. And I went there to scout an area so I can set up my stand and deer hunt a good area. But I got there, and there's no houses on this road. It's at the very back of the conservation area, and it's like a red ribbon trout fishing area. So it's a really pristine forest. And I get all the way to the dead end road, and I park my Mustang. I open up the door, I get out, and I walk to the edge of this cliff, and down below I can see the Merrimack River. Like, it's a huge cliff. You can see the entire conservation area. And it was just a really cool view. And I'm like, how the heck am I going to get down that cliff, cross that river with my bow and all my gear, and effectively hunt? So I'm just sitting there thinking, and I walk back to my vehicle, and then I see this this jet black creature scurry on all fours. And I'm like, what the heck is that? Is that a hog? Is that a black bear? Or is that like a group of turkeys moving together? Because in September, there's still leaves on the trees. They haven't quite fallen yet, and it was pretty thick. But this thing was like right off the parking lot. And I watched it scurry through the woods. It stands up and then slowly hides behind a big oak tree. So when I saw it hide, all I saw was like this part of its body. And it like hit in slow motion, like that. Yeah. So I'm staring at it, and I'm like, what the heck was that? That must be like an intelligent black bear to know to hide behind a tree like that in super slow motion. And I just stared at that tree, and nothing ever popped out. So I was just scratching my head like, what the heck was that? I went there the next day to bow hunt in the morning, and I just sat there in my car. It was dark. I could see the sun starting to come up, and it was like an orange color. And I got this really bad feeling like, Miguel, don't go in there. Just don't go in there. And I didn't hunt that morning. I was like, man, I spent all that time scouting. I drove all the way out here, and I didn't even hunt. But I got the feeling like, man, if there's a black bear in there, I don't want to be walking through the dark down a cliff, crossing the river, and going to the most remote part of this conservation area, because like you're accessing the back where people can't get into it. Like, you either have to have a boat or go down that cliff. And yeah, after I saw that black creature, I didn't want to go in there. I was like, yeah, screw that.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot, where you just have to trust those instincts. If something doesn't feel right, don't push through it. It's your intuition, or maybe even your spiritual nature telling you this isn't good.
Yeah, absolutely. I talked to a Catholic priest not too long ago, and he said, Miguel, your mind's going to speak to you and your heart's going to speak to you, and they're going to communicate with each other, and you're going to get really confused. He's like, but when your gut speaks to you, listen to it. He's like, your gut will never lie to you. I agree with that.
Right. Yeah, and that intuition that is God-given, and very likely the more closely connected you are to the spirit, the spirit leads you, and you can discern what the spirit wants you to do, and probably keeps you safe in those situations because you are on the same, level for God to communicate through you.
Absolutely. As long as you pray every day and you're not living like a reckless life, I think that you'll have that intuition to be able to discern like a good situation between a bad situation. Regardless, we still get ourselves into bad situations,
Right.
but we knew that something was wrong from the beginning. So about a year, it was about exactly a year or almost a year after that encounter, I wondered to myself, what the heck was that? And then here where I'm living at, I started having experiences. There was a time whenever I went up the driveway. Okay, let me go back. I went into town and I was coming back, and I stopped at the top of the driveway to check my trail camera because I was like, hey, I'm already here. Might as well check the trail camera so I don't have to come all the way back up. And I checked the trail camera, switched the SD cards, walked back to my vehicle, and this is a forested driveway. And I'm standing in front of my car, and I hear this whistle to my left, just a loud, sharp whistle, real loud. I'm like, oh man, someone's there. Like someone's coming towards me. And I look, there's no one. And about 3 seconds after that, there's a whistle right in front of me, real loud whistle. And then I'm like, what the heck is this? I'm looking in the woods. I can't see because it's summertime. And then to my right, I hear another whistle, real loud. And everything goes quiet. And I'm just like, I'm being watched. Like there is someone in the woods. People are watching me right now. Who the heck could it be? And my instinct was telling me that there's trespassers or crackheads, because out in the country, like there's a lot of meth heads and stuff. I hate to say that, but there just is. It's a sad world we live in. But that's what I thought it was. And then curiosity got the best of me. I went home. I sat there and I thought about it, like, what the heck? Someone is in the woods. So I went back up the driveway and I stood right there in that spot where the whistles happen. And there's these 2 orange orbs floating through the woods. And I mean, I'm like, I would say like 40 feet from it. And I'm watching them move through the woods. And again, I got that gut feeling like, do not go near that. And the only thing I could think that it was in the moment was 2 people carrying lanterns walking through the woods, or someone with their cell phones. Like people are walking with their cell phones lit up. And then, I don't know, later on after that, I was doing Bigfoot research because part of me thought it might have been Bigfoot. The whistles were strange. And I came across a documentary of a lady in the Himalayan mountains, and she said that she heard, or she had like this Bigfoot encounter. She passed out. Whenever she woke up, like the thing whistled at her. And it's like, man, these things whistle. So like, I don't know. I'm still wondering, like, is this real? Is this actually happening? Like, no, Bigfoot doesn't exist, Miguel. Like, you're just overthinking it and diving into weird conspiracies. Like, there's got to be a rational explanation to all this. But the strangeness continued on the property. I was finding like structures, finding feathers in the middle of the road, and weird little occurrences that I couldn't really contribute to anything. But excuse me. It was probably in June. This was 2019. I went out that day to look for chanterelle mushrooms, and they were growing all over the property. So I went through the woods and I was collecting them. I had like this camouflage backpack, and I went all the way through the woods, and I was thinking, man, if these things are growing all around the property, if I go into the deep woods, I'm going to find like a bunch of them. So I went deep into the woods, and to my amazement, I don't know, like when I went deep in the woods, there weren't very many mushrooms. So I was like, I guess these things are growing like right around the house. The house is surrounded by woods. And I ended up coming back towards the house, and I collected as many mushrooms as possible. So as I was walking back to my house, I'm going down the forested driveway, and I can start to see my car, the parking lot, barely through the trees. And as I'm getting closer, I hear just like a slight, I don't know, it sounded like a squirrel's like messing around on the forest floor like a robin that hopped on the floor. And I looked, and I didn't see anything. Because at this point, like, anything's getting my attention. I'm like really looking because I think there's like people out there. I take a few more steps, and because I thought I saw a stump, like a black stump, whenever I heard that noise, and I'm like, no, that's just a stump. So I took a few more steps, and I hear that noise again, and I look over, and this creature just like stands up. And he just like walks off, just like the Patterson-Gimlin footage, except this thing was jet black, about anywhere from 6 to 8 feet tall. I can't say for sure, but he had a round head, black almond-shaped eyes. I mean, jet black, like a shark or like I don't know, like a bull or something. And he looked very ape-like, but also very human-like. He had a flat nose, like a really flat face, big brow ridge, and big wide shoulders. He was jet black though, from head to toe. He was like an ink black color, and on the back he had like these white stripes, kind of like a skunk or a lemur. He had 2 of them going from his shoulder blades to like right above his butt. And I don't know, it kind of reminded me of a skunk. Like that's like the impression I got. But I'm just standing there like shocked, looking at this thing as it's walking through the woods. And when it's walking, like it looks over at me a few times. I don't know why, but I think just to see like if I was going to pursue it or if I had a firearm. And I watched him walk into some cedar trees, because he walked through the oaks into cedars. And when he walked into those cedars, he just disappeared. And then I snapped back into reality because I didn't know what to do. I was just frozen, like, whoa. The only thing I thought to myself was, if this thing comes at me, I'm going to run. And I'm going to go inside and slam the door shut. But it never did, so I just stood there. But I had that safety, like, there's the house. I'm almost there. So if he comes at me, I'm running. But he didn't.
How far away do you think you were from him?
I was probably I would say about 40 feet.
Okay.
So he was right there. I had no idea. Even when I stopped and looked the first time, when I guess he was like crouched down. I don't know if he was like picking mushrooms or sleeping or what, but I kicked him up and he jumped, like he came up and just started walking. And he didn't run either. Like when he walked through the forest floor, like there's oak leaves everywhere. When he walked, it was dead silent. Like you didn't hear anything. And that's what really shocked me, was like, man, these things are moving around us and we can't even hear them. But I snapped back to reality and was like questioning my sanity. Like, did I really see that? So I did. I ran back towards the house and I went to like cut him off. So like I went through the yard and back into the woods. I stepped over like an old barbed wire fence, took about 2 or 3 steps into the woods and just stood there. And I could hear this thing. Like it got upset. It was like, it sounded like a horse or like a caveman, like, and when I described that, people were like, that's a white-tailed deer. That's obviously a white-tailed deer. It's like, no, like you don't understand. Like the lung capacity was enormous when this thing was huffing. And not to mention, I just seen it. Like I literally just yeah. So I've spooked many white-tailed deers. Like they'll blow, and this was different. Like if you heard it, you would be like, oh my God. But the feeling I got there was, Miguel, don't go. Like do not go. Like this thing is being territorial. So like I took a few steps back, went back over the barbed wire fence and walked to my house, like shaking my head like, oh my God, they do exist. For some reason, like hearing it really confirmed it. Like I seen it, but when I heard it, it like really put the terror in me. Oh, man. So about 3 weeks went on after that, and I really got into Bigfoot, and I was really questioning my sanity. Like, okay, I really saw this like clear as day. It was like right there, and the sighting lasted anywhere from like 5 to 8 seconds. And when something like that happens, everything goes in slow motion. So it felt like it was like 20 or 30 seconds. But I really didn't know what to do. So I had this Panasonic HC870 camcorder that I got for deer hunting, because I was going to self-film like my hunts and try to like get it on film, make like a YouTube channel. And that's what I was doing in that time. I was really trying to start something and just, I don't know, decompress, I guess. Just get out in nature, keep busy, do what I love, and try to keep my life moving forward, because I found myself in a really dark place. At that time, I had sciatica. I had like 2 or 3 herniated discs in my back.
Wow.
Yeah, it was rough because I could barely walk. And like that whole time, like I was limping around, and the sciatica went all the way from my back down to my toes, so I couldn't even like stretch out my leg. Like trying to stretch out my leg was just like excruciating pain. Driving in my car, like anytime I hit a bump, it felt like glass shattering in my back. So it was rough. But one strange thing was, after that encounter, the pain went away for about 2 or 3 weeks because the adrenaline. Yeah, I don't know how I was able to run around my yard and try to cut this thing off, but like for some reason, all the pain just went away. And I think that was adrenaline. I have no idea. But eventually the pain came back. I was walking the driveway nonstop all the time, and carrying that little Panasonic camcorder. Well, eventually I was like, dude, I'm never going to see one of these things again. Like the chances of seeing another one are very, very slim. Like, Miguel, you saw one. That's it. You're not going to be able to film one of these things. And I was out there all the time. Anytime something would happen, I was like, okay, it's just a bird. Okay, it's just a squirrel. There's nothing. Okay, everything's just dead. So I got some bad news, and me and the ex were like completely done after that. And I was like really pissed off. So I was like, I'm just going to go walk. Like, I'm not bringing my phone. I'm not bringing the camera. Screw Bigfoot. Like, I just wanted to get out of the house. So I walked up the driveway, past the spot where I seen the Sasquatch, went all the way up to where I heard the whistles prior to that. And it's a big circle driveway. So I'm walking on the other side. And for some reason, like, I kind of got like this OCD whenever I was looking for Bigfoot, like, don't step on a leaf, don't step on a stick, like just trying to be as quiet as possible. So like anytime I'd walk, I'd like take a few steps, stop, look, just stand there, observe the woods, and then take a few more steps. But I'd always like step in a spot that was like really quiet. Well, I was doing that unknowingly because I guess I just got in a pattern of doing it. And when I got down on the other side of the driveway, I was walking real quiet, trying not to step on any sticks or anything. And I wasn't paying attention. And this side of the driveway is like pavement. So when I was walking, I stepped on this like white rock, and it made this sound like, and then when I did that, I saw this jet black creature on all fours scurry to the left of me, right off the driveway. I mean, it was right there, and I'm watching it. It looked like a little chimpanzee moving through the woods. And as I'm watching it, it gets up and it like slowly hides behind the tree. And I'm like, man, this is just like at Merrimack Springs a year ago in 2018 when I went there to scout that area. Just like that. And I'm like, what is that? And I'm standing there looking at this oak tree that it hid behind. And I'm like, okay, it's gone. Whatever it was, never going to see it again. And right when I'm thinking that, this little juvenile Sasquatch like pops out from the side of the tree. He's just like perched up like this, but he's looking this way and I'm right over here. And I'm standing there like watching this thing like, oh my God, like it is a juvenile Sasquatch. Like I cannot believe it. And this thing was probably about, I would say 4 feet tall, give or take, jet black, looked like a little gorilla. And the crazy thing is he had like a really big conical shaped head, like a cone shaped head, almost like a KKK member or like Nefertiti. Like when you look at Nefertiti from the side, it's like a big elongated head. That's how it was. And it came to a point at the top and it was just jet black. The hair was about 3 or 4 inches. The hair had this shine to it. Like when the sun was beaming down, because it was a beautiful summer day. This was in July. We're in July now. And it almost looked like chrome or something. Like it had this shine to it. But it had like these big round eyes, like the diameter of like a Coke can. And they were like super white, like real vibrant white. Like if you look at like a little kid's eyes, have you noticed like how white they are? Like they don't have like any blood vessels in their eyes. It's just like a real vibrant white. That's how it was, like really white. And his pupils were like, I don't know, smaller than a dime. So you could see a lot of white, and there was like black in the middle, but it looked like light bulbs, like real glossy white. And he had long, thin lips. You couldn't see the nose. Like the whole face was like covered in hair, and all you saw were these big eyes sticking out. And you can see the canines and they were sticking down from the top down, not from like down up. So you could see two canines, and they're dental white. Like if you ever seen like a German Shepherd, like their teeth are like super white. That's how it was, and they're resting on his bottom lip. And he's I don't know, he's built like a little beer keg or something. Like he was really robust, and he had like, I don't know, like baby features. So he was like really cute. He was like a handsome little guy. I don't know how to say it, but he was really cool. He was chill. You could tell that like it bothered him that he heard something and didn't know what it was. Like he was just like this is another day. I'm doing what I do every single day, watching people, and I thought I heard something and I didn't. Like, dang. It was almost like he was bored. Like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, but he's standing there looking to his left, and I'm over here to his right, and I got my left hand on my left knee because I'm kind of like bent down, looking through the trees, and I'm just like, oh my God. But he pans to his right like this, and when he sees me, his eyes go boom. Like it looked like he just saw the devil or something. Like I was a demon. Like, oh my God, a human. And you could see the panic and the shock in his eyes. But right then and there, like he got really serious. Like, okay, I know exactly what to do. So like he went from panic to like real serious, and then like he kind of puffed up, and like, this is the oak tree, and he goes boom like that. And it was like a fish being spooked in the water. If you ever just seen a fish just boom, like they're gone. That's how it was. And there was like some brush next to the tree, so I could only see from like, I don't know, like his waist up. And whenever he like dipped down like that, like I remember like one of the, I don't know, like the, I don't know, the shrubs like next to the tree like shaking back and forth. And I stood there watching, and I didn't hear anything. Like you didn't hear like like or something, you know, like when a deer runs off. It was just dead silence after that. And I was like, oh my God, I just seen a Bigfoot, like another one. Oh, they're here. I kept saying that to myself, like, oh my God, they are real. And I kept saying that over and over. Oh my God, that was so cool. And then like the forest got really quiet, and I thought, should I pursue this thing? No, because that means mom and dad are around. What I'd seen 3 weeks before that was either mom or dad. And if I go after this thing, they might not be happy. And I just had another Class A encounter, so it's like, why chase it? Like you just that answers all your questions. You don't need to go shake this thing's hand or something. Like it was an intense situation. So I walked back to my house, and that's really what kicked everything off. Like I had to see another one to really confirm it. So in reality, I've already seen 3 of them, but I didn't know what that first one was because I never really saw it. But whenever I witnessed that juvenile, exactly like how he ran on all 4, stood up, I knew that what I'd seen a year before that was a Bigfoot. What I was thinking was a bear, turkeys, or maybe hogs. That's what it was. So I feel like these things followed me from place to place. And things got really serious after that. Like they started leaving me like gifts. Like whenever I'd walk the driveway, there was like this old telephone pole that was along the road, and I'd always put my phone there because I'd be wearing gym shorts, and when I'd walk, that phone would like slap around in my pocket, and it was just annoying. It'd like weigh down my shorts. And I was wearing shorts because I couldn't like put on pants. Like the pain, it was really hard to put on like socks or shoes. It was like it was painful. So I was wearing like gym shorts and Crocs. Like it made life easier, and it was hot outside. So, and it was really quiet when I'd walk in that type of clothes. For some reason, like the Crocs, when I was walking, like how I told you I'd walk real slow, like it didn't make the noise that like shoes or boots would make. It was just like really quiet, and it was comfortable. But anyways, I put that phone there, and I always did that. And whenever I went back to that telephone post, there was a mushroom sitting right there, right where I put my phone. So I was like, maybe that thing fell out of a tree. I wonder if mushrooms can grow up in the trees, because like maybe like they collect like leaves and create like dirt up there, like whenever it gets wet. Maybe it fell out of the tree and landed right there. And they would leave like feathers on a chair that I would sit out there in the woods. One thing I forgot to mention was whenever I seen those 2 orbs and I heard those whistles, after I seen the orbs, whenever I was walking back, it was completely dark. And they were there, and I
Mm.
didn't know it. I heard thump in the woods, and it sounded like a big
Mhm.
buck just like jumped up, but I never heard it run off. And then I
Mhm.
heard one like charge me, and it whooped 3 times, like a whoop,
Oh.
whoop, whoop. So this is before I'd seen them, had my encounters, but
Mhm.
yeah, I forgot to mention that part when I was walking back after seeing the orbs. So I was
Mm.
having like experiences, I just couldn't figure it out. So yeah, at this
Mhm.
point, I'm a full believer, and we're going into fall time. So summer's over, fall's here. I've done a lot of research, and I'm like, dang, I missed my opportunity at filming these things. I'm not finding anything. Like, they're
Mhm.
probably gone. Well, one day I'm sitting in my room. I got the window open, and I was a smoker at the time, I'll admit it. So it was
Mhm.
really cold outside. So I'd hold my hand out the window, and I was smoking. And
Mhm.
I was like super depressed. I was just really down that day. I was in
Mm.
the dumps, like had the blues. But I'm sitting there, and I hear these foxes going off in the woods, like they're going crazy. I mean, it sounds like a
Mhm.
chimpanzee's being ripped apart. That's what I thought at the time.
Mhm.
Like, my God, they're out there. And then I got the spotlight, and I'm shining it where I see where I'm hearing these foxes, and a fox comes out of the tall grass, out of the woods, in the yard, and then goes through the yard back in the woods. A couple minutes later, another one comes out. He's like real low to the ground, and the whole time this vocalization's going off. It sounds like a chimpanzee's in trouble, but I guess it's the
Mhm.
fox, like maybe a fox in distress call. They're just
Mhm.
going nuts. And then a few minutes later, another fox comes out of the tall grass, through the yard, back into the woods. All of a sudden, I hear like this big commotion, quartering to my left, across the yard in the woods. So I shine the spotlight from the foxes into the woods, and I just see all these glowing eyes. I mean, there's got to be
Mm.
anywhere from like 5 to 9 sets of glowing eyes. Like, there's too many to
Mhm.
count. And I'm like looking at it, and the spotlight is like penetrating the outside of the woods, but you can't see in the woods. So all you see are these
Mhm.
glowing eyes, and they're probably about 3 or 4 feet off the ground, and they're all swaying up and down like
Mm.
this. So I'm like, man, that's got to be deer. I guess that distress call like called in a big group of does, like they came in running to check it out. And I'm
Mhm.
thinking, like, as I'm shining that light, if this is Sasquatch, the eyes would be way higher off the ground. I kid you not. As soon as that thought crossed my mind, one of the sets of eyes goes.
Mm.
So like I don't want to exaggerate, but I know for sure it was more than 9 or 10 feet. And I was like, oh
Mhm.
my God, there's bigger ones. Like, what I saw, I
Mm.
thought was huge, but there's like way bigger ones. It was almost like an elevator, like it went,
Yeah.
and they were big. And then right at that moment, I'm hearing in the direction
Mm.
where I seen the foxes. So I take the
Mhm.
spotlight off of them, and I'm shining over here, and I hear the and it sounds very bipedal. It sounds like a huge 6, 7 foot man is walking out there in the woods, like a big
Mhm.
lumberjack, and it's slowly approaching. And I can't see it because it's so thick in the woods. So I shine my light in this gap, because there's like a gap right there in the woods, and I'm like, when this thing crosses that gap, I'm going to be able to see it. And it did. It walked right through that gap, and it was like a white Sasquatch, had a round head, really big shoulders, like a whitish gray one. And he didn't look over at me. Like, when he walked, he just kept walking. The
Mhm.
spotlight was on him, and he acted like he was not affected by it, didn't care about it. And I have
Mm.
the Panasonic camcorder out the whole time, but I got the spotlight in one hand, camcorder in the other, and you just can't see anything. It's just pitch
Wow.
black. I don't know how to
Yeah.
use settings on a camera. It's got night vision, but like the night vision, you can only see like 3 feet away. But you can hear the foxes vocalizing in the recording, but that's it. Like, you can't hear these things
Mhm.
walking, and it's just confusion.
Mm.
Man, I did a crap job. But anyways, that
Mm.
Sasquatch walked to where that group was. Like, he came from an opposite direction and met up with them.
Mhm.
But yeah, that pretty well sums up my main encounters. I've had a lot more experiences and possible partial sightings, like a lot of
Mhm.
experiences. And I do this all the
Mhm.
time. So I hear strange things every now and then, and people are sending me all
Mhm.
kinds of things. And I
Mhm.
research places, and, I've heard wood knocks, and
Mhm.
I don't know. found structures, a lot of things, a lot of sign. Not a lot of sign, not like everywhere I go, but every now and then I find something like a big cluster of structures, or I found some cool stuff in South Carolina. I don't know. There's just a lot to it, but yeah, feel free to ask any questions.
Yeah, I'm curious, when you first experienced the things in the woods, and you said for the next couple weeks your sciatica pain was gone. So did you tell anybody about that, or did you keep it all to yourself?
The sciatica pain or the Bigfoot encounters?
The encounters.
Oh yeah, I kept that to myself. I didn't tell my family. I was like, I'm not telling anyone, because I'm already going through stuff in my life and they're just going to think that I'm crazy. Like, that's the last thing I need. So I tried to keep it to myself, but I couldn't. Like, I found myself talking to people being like, have you ever had a Bigfoot encounter? Do you believe Bigfoot exists? I got the feeling that if I talked to these hunters, they would know what I'm talking about. And I'd ask people and they'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah. But for some reason, since I had so many experiences, I thought everyone knows about this, and nobody did. I felt really alone, really isolated. And one day I decided, okay, I'm going to write down these encounters. I'm going to put them on YouTube, and I'm going to put them out there for people to see or listen to. And I know for a fact what I encountered was real, and it really happened. These things are out there. So other people are going to confirm that. I guarantee you someone else has seen this little juvenile with a conical shaped head and similar things. And to my amazement, I put that video out there, and all of a sudden people started contacting me like, hey, I had this experience in Michigan, or I'm in Minnesota and this happened. So I started calling people. And then a farmer from Missouri contacted me, and he's like, I got all kinds of stuff happening out here. You need to get out here right now. And I'm like, okay, can I bring my camera? He's like, you bring your camera, just get out here right now. And that ended up being like one of the biggest films I ever made. I just got in my car, filmed everything that happened, and I started doing documentaries. I'm like, I guess I'm a YouTuber now. And I prayed. The crazy thing is, before that, I was praying because, like, the sciatica pain, the dark spot that I was in my life, I said, God, I need a job that I like. Please help me find a job that I like. And I didn't know, I wasn't putting out those encounters to start a YouTube channel. And like 3 weeks after that prayer, 2 or 3 weeks after that prayer, the channel started. And it's like God gave me, like he answered my prayer.
Wow.
So he used something really dark and bad for good. I got to see his power, like, and how it works, and it really increased my faith. So I always pray.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So have you always been a Christian, or was there a point where it really clicked for you?
I've always been a Christian, but I was a struggling Christian. Like, I would hear the word and not obey it. Like, I knew it was real. I fell off the map, quit going to church, started partying, and just lived a reckless life. And I found myself in a dark place, and I said, I got to go back to God. And I mean, I still struggle today, but I'm doing a lot better now than what I was. Because once I start feeling better, I'm praying, I get back into sin. It's like, I don't know, almost like King David. Like, you have all these things, you're feeling great, you got a kingdom. Who cares if I sleep with my best friend's wife and kill him? You know what I mean? It's like, no. You know, it's easy to fall back into stuff like when you're sinning. I hate to use that as a reference, but
Right. Yeah. Those weaknesses, the devil knows how to use those weaknesses and leverage them.
Yeah, especially when you're feeling good, that's when it's most dangerous, because you're like, no, everything's fine. I can do this and be okay. And that's where you really mess up. So
yeah. Yeah, you let your guard down, and we should never let our guard down.
no, especially when you're doing good. Because that's when you're most vulnerable. I feel like whenever you're in a really bad state in life, that's when you're closer to God. So you got to be mindful that, hey, if I'm doing good, do not mess it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Blessed are those who suffer, especially in this life, and the reward is greater in heaven.
Another main experience that I had, forgot to mention it because I started off with I found that cedar tree next to the chair whenever I was hunting. Whenever I was 12 years old, I was sitting in my room. It was summertime. I had the window open, and I had like this old compact computer, and I'd get on like AOL and MySpace and like chat with people. It was like kind of like a new thing, so I was excited doing that. I was watching Family Guy on Cartoon Network, and it had been like 9 p.m., maybe 10 or 11 p.m. For some reason, they'd play Family Guy on Cartoon Network like every Wednesday. I don't know. I don't watch cartoons anymore, but I remember that because I'd always watch Family Guy. But I had the window open, and I heard this, like, I mean, the best way I can describe it is like a werewolf howl. It was so deep and guttural. It sounded like a monster was in the woods. I mean, it was terrifying. Like, it sounded like somebody took a werewolf call, set up a PA system out in the woods, and blasted it like concert loud. And it scared me so bad. I shut that window. I jumped into my bed, put the covers over me, and I was like, I'm not coming out till the next morning. No one else heard it. And I thought my brother was like playing a prank on me. I mean, it was the only thing my brain could think of. But yeah, that was another experience. In high school, me and my buddy Bruce, we would road trip after school, and we were going to the river down at like a state highway out in the country, going towards where I had that experience with my ex when we did like the wood knocks and the tree fell over and I got screamed at. We were going in that direction. And by this point, it's almost dark. We're going down a highway. He's driving this old Crown Vic, which is like a police interceptor car. And we see this possum way down the hill in the middle of the highway. It's getting ready to cross. My buddy Bruce steps on the gas. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, why are you going to like kill like an innocent animal? And I'm just thinking like, oh man, what's he doing? We go from like 55 to 80 miles an hour, and we're almost about to hit that possum. And this creature dives out of the woods and snatches up that possum, throws it up in its mouth, and shakes it around like a rag doll and tears back off from the woods. And this thing was like a lion. It was the size of a lion. It was ginormous. It was like a giant pit bull on steroids, but the face was like a hyena, and it had this mane around its neck. Like the fur everywhere else was like an inch long, like really short, and it was like a blue pit color, like a gray color, if you ever seen a blue pit bull. But it had like this mane around its neck and a fat head with like pointy ears, but it had like the snout like a wolf or a hyena or like a German Shepherd, and it was like muscular. But I didn't know what it was. Like once we passed that spot where the possum was, my buddy slows down. He goes, "Whoa." I was like, "Did you see that?" He's like, "Yeah." I talked to him years after that. I mean, like 10 years after that. And I asked him, hey, you remember that big dog that we saw off Highway KK going towards the Merrimack River? And he goes, no.
Wow.
What? How do you not remember that?
Huh.
Yeah.
So you both saw it clearly. And did you ever talk about it right after or in the recent?
No, we never talked about it again. No.
Well,
we just didn't know what it was. In my mind, I was like, dude, that was like Cujo or like dogs breeding out in the woods. Like some big dog must have bred with another big dog and created like some weird mutation.
Was it on all fours the whole time, or did it ever go on two legs?
No, it never stood up. It seemed like the front legs were like a bodybuilder, like huge, but the back legs were like smaller. I don't know how to describe it.
With everything you know now, what do you think it was?
I ended up thinking maybe it was a dog man, but then later on I started to hear about hellhounds, and I don't know if you ever heard about that. And somebody on YouTube, I can't ever find this video anymore, but he had like this thumbnail picture of a hellhound, and this one was black, like a dark black color, but it had that same mane around its neck like a lion, and it looked just like it. Just the color was off.
Oh man.
Yeah. And after interviewing people, a lot of people have seen this thing.
Okay. Yeah, that would be difficult for a teenager to process. And then you never talk about it. And so you can't really make sense of it if you don't talk through it or get anyone else's opinions. And it is really fascinating that your friend doesn't remember.
Yeah, that blew my mind. And I would say, because I already told you about the shadow person story, the next significant encounter, I was in high school. I went to a party with that same guy that I seen the hellhound with. We went to a town called Bourbon. It's actually this shirt. I don't know if you can see that, Bourbon, Missouri. Oh, never mind.
Okay.
I disappeared. But anyways, that's what
Yeah.
this shirt is. It's the next
Okay.
town over. But anyways, I drank like 2 or 3 beers, and I was like, I'm not drinking anymore because this town is notorious for fighting people, especially people from my town. Like, they just do not like us. But the people there were pretty cool, but I made sure not to drink because I didn't want to like get in some stupid fight.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just trying to be responsible, which was rare for me at that age.
Mm-hmm.
But I got home, my buddy dropped me off, and I went to bed, and I woke up around 2 or 3 in the morning. I woke up and I couldn't move. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? And I tried to get up and I couldn't. The only thing I could move and control was my breathing. Like, my lungs were still working and my eyeballs were working, but everything else was frozen. And I'm trying to like get up, and people say it's sleep paralysis, but I was like super aware. I could think. I'm sitting there like wondering like, what do I do? Like, what's going on? And I look over to my right, and standing next to my bed, this is no joke, this really happened. There's this gray alien standing next to my bed, and he's looking down at me. Like, he doesn't have like a facial expression. Like, he's not smiling, he's not angry. He's just like, and the best way I describe it is like when you're a little kid and you're looking like at an ant colony or ants moving on the ground, you're just like, just staring at him. That's what he was doing. He was looking down at me. So I panic, and I'm trying to move. I'm trying to break free. And I noticed that the fan next to my bed, it was oscillating extremely slow, like rather than just being fast. Like, it was in slow motion. So I start to really panic, and finally I'm able to break free. I sit up, and the thing's gone. And I went into like my parents' bedroom, and I'm like, hey, have you guys seen anything weird? I can't remember exactly what I said, but they're like, no, go to bed. Now, I wasn't about to tell them what I'd seen. It's just like, they're going to think I got the devil. Yeah, but
that would be so terrifying.
Yeah, it was.
So what happened after that? How did the rest of the night go? When you woke up in the morning, what were you thinking? Or was that something where you thought, oh, this is just my imagination, move on? Or, I mean, how did you process that as a kid?
Everything was normal once that ended, and the next morning was normal, but I knew without a doubt what I'd seen. Like, I didn't question, like, did that really happen? Like, did I really see that? Like, for some reason, like, I was like, that was there. Like, I saw that clear as day. Because when I looked over, I could see it. Like, had like these big brown black eyes. It looked just like what you see like in the drawings, like what a gray alien looked just like that.
Wow.
But yeah, it's been really hard because I don't know, people struggle with like anxiety and depression, and I've always wondered about it and like how to manage it and cope it, and I've done fairly good. But when you add all these external experiences to it, things that shouldn't exist, it's really hard. It'd be one thing if I just saw one Bigfoot or just had like one paranormal experiences, but I've had like a multitude of experiences, and it's really hard to to deal with it all. I don't know. I feel pretty numb to the world. Like, I don't know, like things don't seem as interesting anymore. And I don't know, it's really hard.
Was that a slow progression, or was there a time when it really switched from being numb or having a different sense of reality? Was that a sudden shift, or was it gradual?
It was just like a sudden shift, and it's like the more I try to do better, the worse I get. So I have to like just do what I can. Like, if I feel like sleeping, I'm gonna sleep, because like it seems like when I try to do better and take people's advice, like I stumble and I fall. And I don't know how to describe it, but like I don't know. For example, like before I moved back to the property where I had these Bigfoot encounters, like the place I was at, I was like, okay, I'm gonna work. I'm going to stay healthy. I'm going to do everything I can. The more I did that, the worse I became. I started getting like insomnia, and I just started going downhill. It's like, that doesn't make sense. Like, I'm going to the gym, I'm trying to work more hours, I'm doing more, and I'm getting worse. Like, what else is a guy supposed to do?
Yeah, that would be very frustrating and demotivating. Why would you want to do the healthy things if it makes you feel worse?
Yeah. So and that's where I really messed up, because I started like drinking to cope with it and doing a bunch of unhealthy things, and it made it worse. I mean, in the moment I felt better, like, hey, I feel normal again, but then it's just like, no, your life's falling apart, Miguel.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, that is a lot to process from the time you're 15 until now, multiple experiences. You know, it's interesting when we talk about trauma, what it's important to uncover what beliefs that you formed after that experience happened. And I'm just curious, when you had that experience when you were 15 after the movie, how did your beliefs change about yourself or about the world? Do you remember anything specific, like any beliefs that
No, nothing changed. Just like a big issue that I had was I would block it out and tell myself that I can continue sinning and everything was going to be all right, and it wasn't. There was a major paranormal experience in that house that I lived in, where I said like the baby was crying, the Bigfoot charged through the woods, I seen that light. There was a lot that happened there, and this story would take like 2 or 3 hours to tell. But long story short was I came across this film, a guy, I think his name was Bill Wisey, and he talked about how he had a heart attack in his kitchen. He went to hell and he's seen a bunch of demons and that hell was real, and he wrote this book and he like preaches all over the world. Really good speaker. And me and the girlfriend that I was living with at that time, after we broke up, she came to my house about 2 or 3 days later, and she told me about the sounds from hell. Like her brother, he's really into church, told her about these sounds from hell. People from like Russia were like mining. They dug like these rods into the ground. You can hear like the sounds of hell. So I was like, okay, I looked it up, and it was terrifying. It sounded like an ocean of people like in pain, like major pain. I don't know if it's real, but basically I started hearing voices one day. This was like in that time frame, and my buddy was in the living room playing Call of Duty, and he had like the TV turned up super loud, so it just sounded like explosions, shooting. And I'm in my computer room, my music room, and I could hear these voices. So like I get down on the ground, I'm trying to find like these sounds. I got my ear like on the carpet, so I turn off my computer, I unplug everything, and I still hear these voices. It's like a man and a woman talking back and forth, like. And eventually, about 15 minutes after that, I tell my friend, I'm like, dude, shut off the Xbox. Like, turn it off. He's like, why? He's like, come here. And he shuts it off, dead quiet in the house. And he sits there with me, and Brad's just like looking at me. I'm like, dude, I swear I was hearing voices. Like, I'm not kidding you. We sit there for about 20 minutes and just nothing. I'm like, Brad, I am telling you, there's a man and a woman talking. And he's rolling his eyes at me, and all of a sudden it starts. Like we can hear him talking back and forth, and it sounds like you went to the principal's office and you're sitting outside the principal's office, and you can hear like your mom and the principal talking, but you can't hear what they're saying because the door's shut. You can just hear voices. That's exactly what it sounded like. And he looks at me like, oh my God. And sorry, I don't want to hold you up too long. It's really hard to talk about this, but all of a sudden, the guitar amp, I had a PV guitar amp, like a vintage one. All of a sudden, this voice comes through it, and it's clear as day, super loud, and it's this Catholic priest talking. And he's like, I remember when I went to hell. He's like, I was drinking, I was smoking, and I had like 3 Bud Lights right there, and I had like this ashtray, a cigarette, and it was weird because he's like, I was Catholic. I'm Catholic. He's like, I was drinking, I had the beer right there, and he's like, I was smoking. And then he was talking about how he went to hell, even though he was a preacher, because he disobeyed God. And talking about like he couldn't believe how that happened, that he was a man of God. Like, how could that happen? And it was loud. It was like a African American preacher. Like, have you ever heard them like preach? Like it's really really powerful. But it was loud. Like this amp sucked. Like when I tried to play guitar through it, it just sounded like horrible. But for some reason, when that guy was talking, it was super clear, real loud. And he started talking about the sounds from hell. So I'm like, Brad, that's weird. Like, I literally just looked up the sounds from hell. And then I plug up the computer, turn it on, I open up YouTube, and I type in sounds from hell. Click on the first video. This is no joke. The synchronicity behind this was shocking. Like, it's scared me to my core. Open up the first video, turn it on, and it's about the sounds of hell. It is that guy that's talking through the amp. The same guy, but like a different video. And it scared me. Like I knew that God was trying to talk to me. He was using like something really evil to shake me up. Like, Miguel, if you don't change your life, that's where you're going to end up.
Yeah. Wow. And your friend heard all of this too.
Yeah, he heard it. I could call him right now and say, Brad, do you remember that day at my house? And he'd be like, yeah, the voice coming through the amp and the sounds from hell. He would tell you. And the crazy thing is, Brad would deny this for about 2 or 3 years after that. He would say, no, I don't remember that. One day he's like, yeah, I remember that. And he told the story just the same way I did. I sometimes wonder, because I'm Catholic, I wonder if it was like Jesus and Mary talking like about me, like, what are we going to do about him? Like, what are we going to do? That, or I hate to confuse it with demonic or something evil. I don't know. Yeah, but that was a big encounter that really happened, and it was just weird, the synchronicity behind it all.
Yeah, you can't call that coincidence, or there is no way to explain that in the natural realm. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I hate talking about it. Like, I try to shove that in the back of my mind, and I've like regressed these memories and just like blocked them out of my mind. And it's done a lot of bad in my life, because like I forget big chunks of my life. And when bad things happen, I just shut them out. Like, I don't know. I struggle with relationships too. Like, I can't handle conflict, which is unhealthy, but it's just like, I don't want to fight. Like, I don't want to argue. Like, I try to like just keep things civil, and it like seems to like escalate things worse. It's like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. So I've struggled in every area of my life. So the best thing I could figure out to do is just take care of myself and try to be mindful. Try to like cope with this and find healthy ways to deal with anxiety when it comes my way. But yeah, for some reason, like when I experience Bigfoot activity, like it doesn't bother me. It doesn't faze me. I'm like, that was really cool. But like somebody being like, Miguel, I hate you, I never want to talk to you again, like sends me like in a panic mode. So like normal life situations seem to be like really brutal on me, but things that are like extremely unknown that would terrify someone else are just like, okay. I handle that a lot better. So I don't know what's wrong with me. There's probably a lot of things.
Yeah, well, the brain's ability to shut certain things out so that you can cope, that's a pretty cool survival mechanism. But then on the other hand, it can cause harm, because anything that we push down or try to forget, that's still affecting us, even if we're not conscious of it. It's still going to impact us in some way. And so a lot of times when people choose not to remember those things, or maybe it's just you don't even have a choice, you just don't remember, like anything in secret, anything in darkness is going to hurt you. And so as scary or hard as it might be to bring those things to the light and to work through them, talk with them, whether it's a spiritual leader or a therapist, it can feel worse before it gets better. But those things that you don't want to remember are going to continue to impact you and weigh you down and cause things like anxiety and depression. So I think it's important to realize that you can't keep things in darkness, and to have everything integrated. And so you can't have these parts like, I'm going to shove this part down, I'm going to not remember this part, just going to push it way back. Then you have these fragmented pieces of yourself, and even though you're not conscious of it, you could have this anxiety running all the time. And well, it's because there's these pieces that aren't integrated and healed and brought to light. Anything in darkness isn't helpful, and it isn't going to move you forward.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to deal with things head on. And if it's something that just causes a lot of pain that you can't control or fix, then I just try to separate myself from that, whether it's people or like situations. And that's what I figured out is like when I get myself involved with like negative people or negative situations, that's what causes this. So I try to just like steer clear from that. And there's just some things that you can't handle head on. Like you just shouldn't put yourself through that to begin with. And one thing I learned, I read this last night in the book called Victory Over Darkness, was we're not a victim of the trauma, we're a victim from the lies that we believed from the trauma.
Right.
Yeah. So I feel like that's true, because a lot of people, they believe these negative thoughts that they hear in their head. Like, no one's going to believe me. People are going to think I'm crazy. Like, no one will like me. I'll never be able to do this job. Like, you convince yourself over time and wire your brain to think negatively. And that's the path that you follow every day. The neural pathways, or like Jesus says, follow the path. And a lot of times we get way off the path.
Yeah, that's very true. Getting to the bottom of what your beliefs are, what your thoughts are that you're telling yourself, because those thoughts reinforce the beliefs. And we don't want to mistrust ourselves. And so we like, well, this must be true. This feels very true. But that's why it can be really helpful to talk to someone else, especially someone who's more trained spiritually or psychologically, to help you break those down and learn a healthier way to think. And for some people, it can be a pretty transformative thing. But for most people, it's going to take that consistent effort and that consistent challenging those negative thoughts and those negative beliefs.
A lot of times you put yourself in situations, like I said earlier, and I see this a lot with like abusive relationships or abusive people. It's like you gotten really close to someone, but they're like hitting you, they're calling you awful names, and you think in your mind like, this person loves me, they just don't know how to handle their emotions. But the truth is like you've convinced yourself that that's what love is, and it's like, no, that's not good. That's not good for you. And these people struggle just to leave or just to know that it's not right.
Right. Because there's that belief too that I deserve this. I must deserve this, because why would this person be doing it if I didn't deserve it?
Yeah, I must have done something wrong. I wasn't good enough. But yeah, you can easily convince yourself that the intrusive thoughts or irrational feelings are reality. And I think a lot of people get caught in that. Nobody is free from that. Like, everyone struggles with it.
Yeah, and to me, it actually does make sense that you fear conflict or disconnection from people more than you do some of these paranormal experiences, because those are outside of yourself. But these experiences in relationships, that's deeply personal. And if you think about it, relationships are the basis of health and happiness in life. And God created us to be in relationship with one another. Whether it's you have the family relationships, those with parents, those with friends, those with romantic partners, and we are just built like puzzle pieces. We're meant to fit into that. And so a lot of times, like, that is the one thing that people struggle with the most, is what's going to disconnect me from people. And conflict, oh, that's so scary, because that disrupts that connection that we need. And same with God. We need that relationship with God. It's like the puzzle is not complete unless all those pieces are together. And yeah,
I agree. And I don't know. I've been called certain things. Like, people try to diagnose me. Like, I think you're bipolar. I think you got an avoidant attachment style. It's like, no, just because I choose not to engage in negativity, that doesn't mean I'm avoidant. Like, I see red flags, I avoid them, and don't walk into them, because later on I'm going to regret it even more.
Right. That's healthy boundaries to recognize.
Yeah, exactly. But overall, I feel like I'm kind of selfish in a way, because I've just, for so long, I've been trying to take care of my needs. So I need to learn how to like love others and not just myself. So there is that.
Well, and both are necessary. I do think when you love and accept yourself, that's the foundation to have healthier relationships with other people, because we allow people to treat us a certain way based on how we view ourselves. If you don't think very highly of yourself or don't think you deserve good, then you're going to have relationships with people who don't treat you well. And so, yeah, self-love and acceptance is what God calls us to as well. You know, we love your neighbor as yourself. Well, it starts with loving yourself first. You can't love someone else in the way that they should be loved unless you're loving yourself. And I think that's where so much internal conflict comes from, is not accepting everything about yourself, accepting all the mistakes you've made, your failures, the things you struggle with the most. When you see that as this integrated whole, like, yep, I love myself with all the faults, with everything I've gone through. And the second piece to that is we really do heal in relationship with other people. We don't just go off all alone. We're not this little island who can just heal. We need other people, and we need God in order to really complete that healing. And sometimes when we put our focus on other people, on loving them, on providing for their needs, the secondary benefit is we become happier and we become more fulfilled, and life has more meaning because it isn't about us anymore. And we receive back, as much love as you give. It's like that fills your cup back up. But when you try to just fill your cup alone, you only get so far, and you're only going to be so happy, because I do believe our true calling is to love others and provide for them, take care of their needs. And it can be a really transformative experience to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of my biggest issues is I like to isolate myself, and I like to be alone. Like I feel like I need to, like, I don't know, recharge the batteries. I can't be around someone for too long, and that's another issue with me. It's just like I can't do the same thing all the time. Like I need my thinking time, and I need time to work, and I need time to do things that make me happy, whether it's like fishing, hunting, hiking, watching TV, just getting time to just do something on my own. So it's hard to like meet other people's needs when I need to meet my own. And it's just, I feel overwhelmed because it's hard to find time to do things. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, everybody needs their different recharge times. Some people need more than others, and there's nothing wrong with that. There is a lot of benefit to being alone, and being alone with your thoughts, and being comfortable with that. And we can really learn and grow and develop ourselves in that way. But having that healthy balance, too much isolation is going to, I think a lot of times it further distorts whatever thoughts we have, because we don't have that grounding with being other people, hearing their perspectives. We get too off in our own head. And the more isolated you are, the further from reality your beliefs and thoughts and feelings can become. So that balance is going to look different for everyone. But I think it's one of those things where you can ask God for direction. Like, what am I supposed to do right now? What do I even need? I don't even know. And continually asking God for that direction. Because we can only understand so much with our human brains anyway. And, like, God knows our thoughts. He perceives our thoughts from afar. He knows our going out and our lying down. He's familiar with all our ways. And so he knows every single move we're going to make. And so I think asking God, how do I do this? What is it? How do I heal? How do I resolve anxiety? How do I go about having relationships? Show me that direction.
Yeah, I agree completely. And with what I do with the channel and the research, I find myself isolated a lot because I'll be way out in the middle of this national forest and it's like everyone is out there enjoying life, hanging out, and I'm out here looking for Bigfoot, middle of nowhere. There's no sound. I could be attacked by some wild animal and nobody would even know that I'm gone. And a lot of times, people have to work. So when I do like these investigations, it's on the weekend and it's like, man, I'm using my weekend to look for Bigfoot. Everyone out there is living, hanging out with their family, socializing. And it's just like, I find myself out there in the middle of nowhere, miles and miles away from my home. Like, what am I doing? What am I even doing? But I just hope that there is some purpose behind it all, because just like with the channel, how I prayed, it all came together. And the strange thing was I used to own a recording studio. And when I left that, like the band, my old life, I had all this equipment. I'm like, great. I spent thousands and thousands of dollars on equipment for no reason. And I got into the deer hunting thing and I was going to sell film. I used all that for my channel. Like all of a sudden I was like, what do I do? Oh, I film these things. Oh, I started a podcast. So I already had like all the equipment and I didn't even know it. I'm like, man, somehow all this worked out. So I'm hoping, praying that somehow me looking for these creatures, trying to find evidence, following up on people's reports has a bigger meaning. And I feel like it will. I feel like something big is going to happen and everything's going to fall into place.
Yeah. The more that we try to have control over our life and orchestrate each piece and plan it all out, I think the less likely it is going to work out. And when you give that to God and you follow his lead and you ask for that guidance and direction and do what he calls you to do, then we don't have to worry about the outcome, because the whole point is to follow that direction.
Yeah.
And
I agree with that for sure. And one main question that I have before we wrap it up, because I know you have a lot to do, you're a busy person, you got kids, you got a job to maintain, is, okay, so we talked about last time, how do people cope with a Bigfoot encounter, but how I explain my experiences with you, it's not just Bigfoot, it's other cryptids, it's paranormal activity, seeing like shadow people, aliens, hellhounds. What do people do if they encounter all of this? There's no answer for that, but what do you think? How do you think a person should handle that and maintain a regular life?
Well, I do think the most important thing is to talk to someone about it, because trying to deal with that on your own is too much. And these channels have a lot of outlets for that. You could connect with, people like you or the subscribers, or if you're religious, find a church with someone you could talk to. Look on psychologytoday.com to find a therapist who aligns with your views. I do think it's really important to externalize that. You can't hold these things in and try to cope with it on your own, because it is too big. And so I think that's the first step. And if you're religious, I think turning to God, reading scripture, that can be really, really helpful. If you're not religious, then maybe going the therapist route, finding someone who will validate you, give you some good coping skills. Figuring out a way to integrate this into your life, because when you have this experience that you are compartmentalizing over here, anytime you compartmentalize something because it's too hard to process, that tells you that you need to find someone to help you through that. That's just how we're made. Humans are very communal. We are very relationship based, and it takes someone to help get you through that.
Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely speak with somebody, seek the word of God, and try to find a support system. And maybe along the way, people will find like-minded individuals that have had the same experiences. And one thing I could assume or figure out that's a bit of truth behind all of this, because there doesn't seem to be an answer. No matter where you go, even if you do find other people with the same experiences, you're still left with, why did this happen to me? The part the verse in the Bible that says, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in heavenly realms." And I feel like people are in spiritual warfare. Like, this is real. It's no joke. And just because you can't see it does not mean it's real. And you have to live by the Spirit, not by the flesh, and just have faith and hope that something good will come out of it, because God does use evil for good, and it is a battle for our soul. And I think maybe a lot of patients that you've spoke with, like, maybe they're just not getting better, or something's just wrong. Like, it feels like there's something spiritual, like you're helping them, but there's only so much you can do. There's only so much that they can do. So I think in some cases, like, you just got to have faith in God, because if you lose that, life can get much darker.
Yes. It's hard to answer for people who don't have that belief. I know for myself, understanding the depth of evil is what brought me back to my relationship with God and really delving into scripture. Because once you really understand how evil this world is, and when you open this door to the paranormal, the only way to deal with that is spiritually, because it's obviously a spiritual realm. These creatures are flesh and blood, but they're also spiritual, and it can really help. You can only fight that spiritual entity with the Spirit of God, and that's the only thing that's more powerful than any of these things, because He created all, and He reiterates all through the Bible that He is the most powerful. And so finding comfort in that, and I mean, just going to the scripture, there's so much in there that helps make sense of this stuff, that helps give comfort, that gives direction, that gives you that armor. So maybe if you're not a Christian or religious in any way, maybe just give it a try. See what the Bible has to say. Look at, I believe Ephesians 6 is what you quoted from. I appreciated the NIV version. That's my favorite. But things like Psalm 91 about finding comfort in God. And when, you feel like the darkness is surrounding you, there's ways to deal with that.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Even people in the Bible went through what we experience. Like David in the Bible, he's talking about, like, God, why have you abandoned me? Why don't you hear me? I feel like I'm in a dark place. And I'm not quoting it exactly, but that's pretty much what he's saying. And then towards the end, he's like, God is good. God hears our prayers. And it was the same way with Job. Like Job was crying out to God, like, he doesn't hear me. He's done all these bad things to me. And towards the end, God answers him and takes him up in a whirlwind, and pretty much says that he misrepresented him. And then all of a sudden he's like, okay, God's good. So we find ourselves struggling with this, thinking God's not picking up the phone, that we're in his waiting room. But even big figures in the Bible were in that same position. And I mean, even Jesus on the cross, like, he's hanging there wondering, like, God, why have you abandoned me? Why have you forsaken me? Crying. And in the end, God uses it for good. And there was a higher purpose behind it all.
Yes. We can't try to understand everything that's going on right now with ourselves or with the world. I think sometimes, well, there's nothing wrong with trying to understand, but understanding that that's not the end game. Like, we do not understand God. I think that it's from one of the Psalms, how precious to me are your thoughts, O God, or how vast are the sum of them. If I were to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. So it's just like, we cannot possibly understand what God's intention is sometimes, or what his plans are for our life. We just have to trust. And that's what faith is. Stepping out, not knowing at all if it's going to work out, how it's going to work out, but you trust God, and he'll provide for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the paranormal experiences that I described to you, that's what brought me closer to God, because it was like, surely that evil thing that was in my house, if that's real, no doubt in my mind, like, God exists. He is real.
Right.
I mean, I've never spoken with them, and I've never seen an
Mhm.
angel, but I know I've seen evil in
Mhm.
physical form. So it's like, okay, if all that stuff is real there, that means God is real for sure, without a doubt.
Mhm.
And yeah,
Right. And
that's
mhm.
what I was going to say is like that's the biggest tactic the devil uses, and it's a battle for our minds between God and Satan. And this is what I've heard. I don't know if it's true that Satan can implant thoughts in your mind. He doesn't know what you're thinking. Only God knows what you're thinking, but the
Mhm.
devil's able to put thoughts in your mind, and he uses negative thoughts to achieve his goal and his end game. So you have to
Mhm.
use the word of God to get those negative thoughts out of your mind. Like, I'm not
Mhm.
good enough. God doesn't love me. God doesn't hear me. Those are all things that he uses to lead
Mhm.
you away from Christ. And
Right.
even people that don't believe in the Bible hear those thoughts, like, I'm not good enough. You don't have to be a
Mhm.
religious person to hear that. Nobody
Right.
cares about me. I'll never be able to get that job. Life sucks.
Mhm.
Like, if you believe that over time, that's what your life becomes.
Right. Hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you okay.
Okay. Uh yeah, and I think I mentioned this last time too, that sometimes I think, and there's nothing wrong with thinking this, that I will pray to God, I have faith that he will heal me or help me through this thing, but he also puts tools and people in our place sometimes to help us through those. So that could come through therapy. It could come through, well, living a life in balance. Are you caring for your body as if it's the holy temple? Are you being active, eating right? I mean, all of those things, if you think about it, God said our body is like the holy temple, and to treat it with that kind of respect and love. And so, I mean, all balance in our life, physical, mental, spiritual, it comes through health, or like taking care of yourself, living a healthy life as to the best that you can, but being conscious about making those changes, um, because God, like makes our bodies so intricately. And so when
Yeah,
things are in balance, we're going to feel better spiritually, physically, all of that.
absolutely. And I mean, I feel like a lot of people just try one thing and say, I don't feel better. Like, maybe they'll get a therapist and they're like, I feel like 1% better. But
Mhm.
it's a multitude of habits that you have to continue doing. So get a
Mhm.
therapist, that raise it up 1%. Start
Yep.
taking vitamins and
Mhm.
eat healthy. That raises it another 2 or 3%. Work out, just even if it's
Mhm.
hiking or just doing daily walks. Find some good friends. Only keep positive people in your life. Find a
Mhm.
job, even if you only work 2 hours a week. Who cares? Like, find something, and all of that
Mhm.
builds up. So I feel like mental health is an accumulation of many bad habits that have been taking place
Mhm.
over time, to where eventually you find yourself in a dark place. And that's another thing I feel like Satan uses is our habits. We start
Mhm.
forming these horrible habits, and then you find yourself living in a living hell, essentially.
Right. Mhm. Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like we've given enough information for the people that have
Mhm.
had these experiences to find some hope. And it's stuff that you've already heard before, stuff you already know. We're
Mhm.
just reinforcing it. And that's what you'll find if you look into therapy, if you look in the Bible. It's stuff that you already know, but it's bringing it to the forefront of your mind and making you mindful of what you need to do, because they've all heard you need to eat vegetables, you need to eat
Right.
healthy, exercise is
Mhm.
good, but until you actually do it, then you actually feel the benefit of it all.
Mhm.
It's
Right.
all
And
easier said than done too.
right, right. But to see it as, this isn't just because it's healthy for me, but I am, when you are a better version of yourself, then it benefits those around you. And when you take care of yourself, you're saying, God, I respect this body and this life that you've given me. So yeah, it can help to reframe it. Not you should do this, because we don't like to do what we're told to do, but when you can think of it more in like, I want to do this because I feel better and because it's better for me and those around me.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes if all you can do is nothing, then just do nothing.
Mhm.
But
Right. Ask God
that
for
can only
direction.
last, yeah, that can only last so long. So
Hmm.
it is what it is. But yeah, do you have anything else that you'd like to add anything you'd like to share?
Nothing that comes to mind at the moment. No.
Okay. Well, it was definitely therapeutic speaking with you, and I really do appreciate you for taking the time out of your life to help me and try to guide me in the right direction. I feel like I'm a lost soul, a sheep that's been separated from the herd, and I'm just looking for my way back. And
well, we all, like sheep, are have gone astray. So yeah, God is going to use that. He's going to use the hardship, and you just allow him to use you, and he will.
Yeah. And one thing I'd like to add is, like, I have thought for years, like, I wish there was a therapist that I could talk to about Bigfoot. And like, I found you in the comments. Here we are talking about God and how to help other people. It's weird. So yeah.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a blessing to speak with you, and you're a really good person. And I really do appreciate you. I hope the best for you and your family. And if you ever need to talk with me about anything, feel free to do so. I'm not sure if I'm too helpful, but it's good to have an ear.
Yeah, we'll be in touch for sure.
Okay. Well, God bless you, Rebecca, and I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, you're welcome. You as well.
Yep. Take care.
Bye-bye.